The Great Hall of the Velen Council was filled with the most powerful beings in the galaxy. 12 species sat together, their leaders watching the massive screen that floated in the center of the room. On that screen was a small blue planet, Earth, home of the humans. Admiral Gorath stood before them all. He was tall, covered in dark green scales, and his eyes burned with the fire of 1,000 conquered worlds. In his long life, he had never lost a battle. He had crushed empires and turned proud civilizations into dust. Now, he looked at Earth with hunger in his heart. "The humans are weak," he said, his voice like thunder. "They have spread to 200 star systems, but they refuse to fight. They refuse to join us. They think peace will protect them." The council members laughed. The Velen Confederacy controlled nearly half of the known galaxy. They had ships beyond counting, and soldiers beyond number. What could humans do against such power? A small figure stepped forward. Her name was Melis, and she was a scholar. Unlike the warriors around her, she studied species before they were destroyed. It was her job to understand the enemy. "I have researched the humans for many years," Melis said. Her voice was soft, almost nervous. "They are a young species. They have only traveled among the stars for 3,000 years. Their bodies are fragile. They live short lives. Their technology appears simple compared to ours." Admiral Gorath smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "You see, they are nothing. Insects waiting to be stepped on." But Melis did not smile. Something in her research troubled her, though she could not say what. The humans were strange. They had been contacted by many species over the centuries, and sometimes those species tried to attack them. But the records of those attacks were incomplete. Ships would enter human space and simply vanish. No battles, no wreckage, just silence. "There are gaps in the records," Melis said carefully. "Species that attacked humans and then never spoke of it again. I think we should be careful." The council laughed again. Gorath waved his massive hand, dismissing her concerns. "Careful? We are the Velen Confederacy. We do not know the meaning of careful. We know only victory." The decision was made that day. Admiral Gorath would lead the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. 2 million warships, 50 billion soldiers, enough firepower to burn 1,000 worlds. They would crush the humans and take their planets for the Confederacy. Far away, on the edge of human space, a small station orbited a cold moon. Inside that station, a man named Yong watched his sensors with tired eyes. He was a commander in the human patrol fleet, responsible for watching the border. Nothing ever happened out here. His second-in-command, a woman named Hana, brought him a cup of tea. She was calm and steady, the kind of person who never panicked. Yong was grateful to have her. "Anything interesting?" she asked. Yong shook his head. "Same as always, empty space and silence." But as he spoke, his sensors began to flash. At first, it was just a few lights, then more, then hundreds, then thousands. The screen filled with red dots, each one representing an enemy ship. Yong felt his heart go cold. He had never seen anything like this. The fleet was massive beyond imagination, stretching across space like a wave of death. "What is that?" Hana whispered. Yong checked the readings 3 times, hoping he was wrong. He was not wrong. 2 million ships, he said quietly. "They are coming for us." He opened a communication channel to the approaching fleet. His hands were steady, though inside he was afraid. He had a duty to perform. "Attention, unknown vessels. This is Commander Yong of the Human Border Patrol. You are entering human territory. Turn back now. This is your only warning." On his flagship, Admiral Gorath received the message. He read it aloud to his officers, and they all laughed. A single human telling 2 million warships to turn back? It was the funniest thing they had ever heard. "Play this message to the entire fleet," Gorath ordered. "Let everyone hear the courage of these foolish creatures. Let them laugh before we destroy them." The message spread across 2 million ships, and 50 billion soldiers laughed at Commander Yong's warning. They thought it was a joke. They thought humans were cowards, pretending to be brave. They were wrong. Yong closed the channel and turned to Hana. His face was pale but determined. "Send a message to Earth," he said. "Tell them what is coming. Tell them we need Protocol Omega." Hana's eyes went wide. She had heard of Protocol Omega, but she thought it was just a story, a legend, something parents told their children to help them sleep at night, knowing that humanity had a secret weapon that would keep them safe. "Is it real?" she asked. Yong nodded slowly. "It is real, and may God forgive us for using it." The message traveled across the stars at speeds beyond light. It reached Earth in moments. Deep beneath the surface of humanity's homeworld, in bunkers that had existed for 10,000 years, old machines began to wake. Lights flickered on in hallways that had been dark for centuries. Dust fell from ancient weapons that had hoped to never be used again. A response came back to Yong's station. It was short and simple. "Understood. Protocol Omega authorized. May our ancestors forgive what comes next." Yong read the message and felt a strange sadness wash over him. He thought about his family back on Earth. He thought about the peaceful life humans had built among the stars. He thought about all the years they had avoided war, choosing kindness over conquest. That time was ending. "What happens now?" Hana asked. Yong looked out the window at the approaching fleet. 2 million ships, coming to destroy everything he loved. They thought humans were weak. They thought this would be easy. Now, Yong said quietly, they learn why the galaxy should have listened to the old warnings. Now they learn what humans really are. Somewhere in the dark of space, the Velen fleet moved closer. Admiral Gorath sat in his command chair, dreaming of victory. He did not know that he was leading his people into a nightmare. He did not know that 50,000 years from now, children across the galaxy would still whisper stories about what was going to happen next. He did not know that he had just made the worst mistake in the history of the universe. The humans were awake, and nothing would ever be the same again. The first human world in the path of the Velen fleet was called Inchon Prime. It was a beautiful planet, covered in green forests and blue oceans. 8 billion people lived there. Families, children, old people who had spent their whole lives in peace. Admiral Gorath looked at the planet on his screen and felt nothing. To him, it was just another world to conquer, another species to crush. He had done this 1,000 times before. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. "Destroy their cities. Show them the price of defiance." His officers obeyed. 1,000 ships moved forward, their weapons charging with enough power to crack the planet's surface. Missiles launched from their bays, streaking toward the cities below. Then something impossible happened. The missiles vanished. They did not explode. They did not change course. They simply stopped existing, as if they had never been real at all. Gorath stared at his screen, not understanding what he was seeing. His sensors showed nothing. No shields, no defense systems, no weapons fire. The missiles had just disappeared. "Fire again," he commanded, his voice rising with anger. "All ships, fire everything." 10,000 ships launched their weapons. A wave of destruction flew toward Inchon Prime, enough firepower to kill the planet 10 times over. The wave vanished, same as before, gone without a trace. Silence fell over the Velen fleet. For the first time in his long life, Admiral Gorath felt something he did not recognize. It took him a moment to understand what it was. Fear. From the shadow of the planet, a single ship emerged. It was small and old, Nothing special to look at. It moved slowly, almost lazily, as if it had all the time in the universe. The ship broadcast one message to the entire Velen fleet. You were warned. On that small ship, an old man named Day sat in the command chair. He was 97 years old, with white hair and deep lines on his face. He had been a general once, long ago. He had retired to live peacefully on Earth, to spend his final years watching sunsets and playing with his grandchildren. But they had called him back. They had woken him from his peaceful life, because the galaxy needed to remember why it should fear humans. Beside him stood Dr. Sue, a woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. She was the chief scientist of the Omega Research Division, a department so secret that most humans did not know it existed. In her hand was a small device, no bigger than a coin. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. General Day looked at the Velen fleet, filling his screen. 50 billion soldiers, all of them ready to kill every human in the galaxy. "I am sure," he said. "Activate the first Omega weapon." Dr. Sue pressed the device. Nothing visible happened. There was no flash of light, no explosion, no sound. But across 10,000 kilometers of space, 400,000 Velon ships suddenly went dark. Their engines stopped, their lights went out, their weapons fell silent, their life support systems died. 400,000 ships became metal coffins, drifting helplessly in the void. Admiral Gorath watched in horror as nearly a quarter of his fleet simply stopped working. His officers screamed reports at him, but none of them made sense. There was no attack. There was no weapon. The ships had just died. "Fire on that vessel," Gorath roared, pointing at the small human ship. "Destroy it now." Every remaining ship turned their weapons on General Day's vessel. Millions of energy beams and missiles flew toward the tiny ship. They passed through it. All of them. As if the ship was not really there at all. As if it existed in some other place, some other reality, beyond the reach of normal weapons. On her drifting ship, Scholar Melis watched with wide eyes. Her vessel was one of the ones that had been disabled, but the viewing screen still worked on emergency power. She saw everything. "They are not inferior," she whispered to herself. "They never were. They have been hiding. All this time they have been hiding what they can really do." The truth hit her like a physical blow. Humans were not a young species pretending to be advanced. They were an ancient terror pretending to be young. Every time another species had attacked them, humans had responded with just enough force to win. Never more. Never enough to reveal their true power. For thousands of years, they had been holding back. Until now. On Incheon Prime, a young soldier named Tay stood on a hill overlooking the city. He was 22 years old and had never seen war. He had joined the military because it seemed like an easy job. Humans did not fight. Everyone knew that. Now he watched the sky fill with dark shapes. Hundreds of thousands of Velen ships hung motionless above the world, dead and silent. It was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. An older soldier stood beside him, a woman with gray hair and calm eyes. "What happened to them?" Tay asked. The woman shook her head. "I do not know exactly. Some kind of weapon, something that turns off machines. But how? Our technology is not that advanced. Everyone says humans are weak." The woman laughed softly. It was not a happy sound. "That is what we tell the galaxy," she said. "The truth is much older and much stranger. We are not weak, boy. We have never been weak. We have just been patient." Above them, General Day's ship moved through the frozen Velon fleet like a ghost. His voice broadcast across all channels, reaching every ship that still functioned. "Admiral Gorath, I offer you one chance. Take your fleet and leave. Go back to your confederacy and tell them what you saw today. Tell them that human space is closed forever. Tell them that the next time anyone comes here with weapons, we will not be so gentle." On his flagship, Gorath gripped the arms of his command chair so hard that his claws left marks in the metal. His pride burned inside him. He had never run from a battle. He had never shown weakness to an enemy. "No," he said through clenched teeth. "I will not flee from primitives. I will not be humiliated by creatures who live less than a century. Send word to the home fleet. Tell them to send reinforcements. We will crush these humans if it takes every ship in the Confederacy." General Day heard the response and closed his eyes. He had hoped it would not come to this. He had hoped that a small demonstration would be enough to make the Velon leave. "Very well," he said quietly. "Dr. Sue, prepare the second phase, and send a message to Earth. Tell them to begin the evacuation protocols. Tell them to wake the sleeping fleet." He paused and looked out at the stars, at the drifting ships, at the planet below, full of people he had sworn to protect. "Tell them," he said, "that the humans are going to war." Deep beneath the mountains of Earth, there was a room that most humans did not know existed. It had been carved from solid rock 10,000 years ago, long before humanity had learned to travel among the stars. The walls were covered in writing that no living language could translate. Strange machines hummed in the darkness, keeping secrets that only a few people were allowed to know. In that room, an old woman named Bora sat before a group of young officers. She was 847 years old, her face lined with more years than most humans could imagine. Normal humans lived only 100 years or so. Bora was not normal. She was one of the keepers, chosen to guard humanity's greatest secret across the centuries. Among the young officers was a man named Wu. He was a historian, someone who studied the past. He had spent his whole life reading old books and ancient records. He thought he knew everything about human history. He was wrong. "You have been called here because war is coming," Bora said. Her voice was thin but strong. "Before you fight, you must understand what we really are. Not the lies we tell the galaxy. The truth." She waved her hand, and the air filled with light. Images appeared, showing a planet covered in ice and fire. It was Earth, but not the Earth they knew. This was Earth millions of years ago, when humans were nothing but animals hunting on the plains. 10,000 years before humans built their first cities, something visited our world, Bora said. "We do not know what they were. We do not know where they came from. We call them the First Ones." The image changed, showing massive ships descending from the sky. They were beautiful and terrible, made of materials that science still could not explain. The First Ones traveled the galaxy, studying every species they found. They searched for something specific. We do not know what. But when they found Earth, when they found humans, they stopped searching. Wu leaned forward, his heart pounding. What did they find? Bora smiled, but there was no happiness in it. They found something that scared them. Something buried in human DNA, in the very core of what makes us human. The First Ones were the most advanced beings in the universe, and they were afraid of us. She showed them another image. It was a message, carved into stone and metal and crystal, copies of which had been found on 100 dead worlds across the galaxy. Before they left, the First Ones created this warning. They placed it on every world they could reach. It says the same thing in every language. Never wake the sleeping species. Never threaten humanity with extinction. If you do, you will unleash something that cannot be stopped. The young officers looked at each other, confused and afraid. "What is inside us?" one of them asked. "What are we?" Bora stood and walked to a window that looked out over an underground lake. The water was still and black, hiding depths that no one had ever measured. "Humans evolved differently than other species," she said. "Most life forms develop the ability to survive. We developed the ability to refuse to die. Somewhere in our evolution, something changed. When humans face total destruction, when we are pushed to the edge of extinction, our bodies and minds can do things that break the laws of nature. She turned back to face them. We can change reality itself, not with machines, not with technology, with will, with desperation, with love for what we are trying to protect. Wu shook his head. That is impossible. Reality cannot be changed by thought alone. And yet it can, Bora said. We have done it before. Every time a species truly threatened to destroy us, humans responded with power beyond understanding. We stopped time. We moved stars. We erased threats from existence. Then, when the danger passed, we forgot. We let ourselves become peaceful again. We buried the memories and the power, hoping we would never need them again. She walked to another part of the room and touched a wall. It slid open, revealing a vast chamber beyond. Inside that chamber floated 10,000 ships, ancient and beautiful, their hulls covered in symbols that glowed with soft light. This is the Sleeping Fleet, Bora said. It has existed for 5,000 years, hidden in a fold of space where time moves differently. The crews have trained across generations, father teaching son, mother teaching daughter, all preparing for the day when humanity would need them. A woman stepped forward from the group. Her name was Gina, and she wore the uniform of an admiral, though no one had ever heard of her. Her eyes were old, much older than her young face suggested. I am Admiral Gina, she said. I command the Sleeping Fleet. My grandmother commanded it before me, and her grandmother before her. We have waited a long time for this day. Part of me hoped it would never come. She looked at the assembled officers, her gaze heavy with the weight of centuries. But it has come. The Velen have refused to leave. They are bringing more ships, more soldiers. They intend to destroy every human in the galaxy. And so we must wake. We must remember what we are. We must become the thing that the first ones feared. Far away, on her drifting ship, Scholar Melis intercepted a strange transmission. It was not military communication or tactical data. It was a song. A woman singing to her child on Inchon Prime, a simple lullaby about stars and dreams and love. Melis listened to the song and began to cry. She did not fully understand why, but something in that simple melody touched the deepest part of her heart. She realized that humans were not preparing for war with anger or hatred. They were saying goodbye to the peace they had loved so much. They were mourning the gentleness they were about to lose. On his flagship, Admiral Gorath received word that reinforcements were coming. Another 1.5 million ships would arrive within days. He smiled, his confidence returning. The humans had caught him by surprise, but numbers would win in the end. They always did. He did not know about the Sleeping Fleet. He did not know about the power buried in human DNA. He did not know that the universe itself had tried to warn him. General Day stood on the bridge of his small ship and opened a final communication channel to the Velen flagship. Admiral Gorath, he said, I offer you one last chance. Retreat now, and we will let you live. Stay, and we will show you why the universe learned to fear the dark. Gorath laughed. You are bluffing. You disabled some of my ships with tricks and technology, but you cannot stand against the full might of the Confederacy. When my reinforcements arrive, we will burn your worlds to ash. General Day closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, there was something different in his gaze, something ancient and terrible. So be it, he said. Remember that we gave you every chance. Remember that you chose this. He ended the transmission and turned to Dr. Sue. Begin the Omega event. Across human space, billions of people felt something change. It was like waking from a dream, like remembering something they had always known but never understood. The power that had slept in their DNA for millions of years began to stir. Humanity was waking up, and the galaxy was about to learn the true meaning of fear. The Velan reinforcement fleet arrived 3 days later. 1.5 million fresh warships, their weapons charged, and their crews hungry for battle. Admiral Gorath watched them take position around his flagship and felt his old confidence return. Now, he said to his officers, we end this. Forget the colonies. We go straight to Earth. We cut off the head of the snake, and the body will die. His combined fleet, nearly 3.5 million ships, jumped through space toward the human homeworld. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Nothing could stand against such power. They emerged from their jump in Earth's solar system, and they found nothing. The space where Earth should have been was empty. The sun that should have warmed the third planet was gone. There was only darkness and silence and cold. Admiral Gorath stared at his sensors, not understanding what he was seeing. A planet could not simply disappear. A star could not simply vanish. It was impossible. Find them, he ordered, his voice shaking. Scan everything. They must be hiding somehow. His ships spread out, searching for any trace of Earth or its people. They found nothing. It was as if humanity had never existed. Then the voice began. It came through every speaker on every ship, speaking in every language at once. It was not one voice, but millions, all saying the same words at the same time. Men and women and children, young and old, all speaking together in perfect harmony. You stand in the place where Earth once was. We moved it. We moved our star. You are looking for something that is no longer here. Gorath felt his blood turn to ice. Moving a star was impossible. Moving an entire planet was beyond impossible. What kind of power could do such things? You cannot comprehend what we are capable of, the voice continued. Your weapons cannot hurt us. Your ships cannot find us. Your soldiers cannot fight us. We are beyond your understanding. We are beyond your reach. The voice paused, and in that silence, Gorath heard something he had never heard before. He heard fear in the breathing of his officers. He saw terror in the eyes of his soldiers. For the first time in the history of the Velan Confederacy, they were facing something they could not conquer. Leave now, the voice said. Return to your homes. Tell your people what you saw here. Tell them that human space is closed forever. Tell them that the next time anyone threatens us, we will not be so merciful. Gorath should have listened. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run. But pride was stronger than instinct. Pride and shame, and the knowledge that his entire civilization was watching. No, he said, I will not flee from ghosts and tricks. Find them, find the humans, and destroy them. In a place beyond normal space, aboard a vessel that existed between moments of time, a woman named Minji heard Gorath's response. She was young, with gentle eyes and hands that had never held a weapon. She was a scientist, not a soldier. But today, she would become something else. Before her was a device that should not have existed. It was not built from metal or crystal, or any material that science could name. It was built from will, from hope, from the desperate desire of a species that refused to die. It was the heart of the Omega event. They will not leave, General Day said through the communication link. They choose destruction. Minji nodded slowly. I know. I hoped they would listen. I prayed they would be wise. She looked at the device, at the impossible machine that would change everything. She thought about all the Velan soldiers who were about to suffer. Millions of them, with families and dreams and lives they would never return to. I am sorry, she whispered. Then she activated the device. Nothing visible happened in normal space. There was no explosion, no wave of energy, no flash of light. But something changed. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. On his flagship, Admiral Gorath opened his mouth to give another order. The word never came out. His body froze. His thoughts stopped. Time itself stopped flowing for him and every other Velon in the fleet. They did not sleep. They did not dream. They simply ceased to experience time at all. One moment they were alive and angry and ready to fight. The next moment, everything was still. For them, no time passed. Not a second, not a heartbeat. For the rest of the universe, 100 years went by. A century later, time resumed for the Velon fleet. Admiral Gorath finished his word, still angry, still defiant. Then he looked at his sensors, and his heart nearly stopped. His ships were old. The metal hulls that had been shining and new were now rusted and pitted with age. The weapons that had been charged and ready were now cold and dead. The food supplies that should have lasted months had turned to dust. Around him, his soldiers began to scream. They looked at themselves and saw what time had done. They were ancient. Their bodies aged 100 years in what felt like an instant. Strong warriors had become frail old men. Young officers had become withered elders. But worse than the aging was what they saw outside their ships. Human civilization filled the space around them. Cities floated in the void, bright with lights and life. Ships beyond counting moved through the darkness, sleek and beautiful. In 100 years, while the Velon fleet had been frozen, humanity had expanded and grown and built wonders that the galaxy had never seen. A ship approached Gorath's flagship. It was small and simple, carrying only one passenger. A young soldier named Hyun docked with the ancient Velon vessel and walked through its rusting corridors. He found Admiral Gorath on the bridge, surrounded by the dust of dead crew members who had not survived the century of frozen time. The once mighty warlord was now a broken old man, his scales faded and cracked, his eyes filled with the horror of understanding. Hyun knelt beside him and offered him a container of water. "Drink," he said gently. "You must be thirsty." Gorath looked at the human with confusion. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you help me, after everything I tried to do?" Hyun smiled sadly. "Because you are suffering. Because you are afraid. Because showing kindness to an enemy is what makes us human." He helped Gorath drink, then sat beside him in the darkness of the dead ship. "We did not want this," Hyun said. "We never wanted to hurt anyone. For thousands of years, we tried to live in peace. We hid our power because we were afraid of what we might become if we used it. We hoped the galaxy would leave us alone." He looked at the stars through the cracked viewport. "But you would not leave us alone. You came with weapons and hatred and the desire to destroy. You forced us to remember what we are. You forced us to become something terrible." Gorath began to weep. In all his centuries of war, he had never cried. Now tears rolled down his ancient face. "What are you?" he asked. "What are humans really?" Hyun was quiet for a long moment. "We do not know," he finally said. "Something in our blood lets us change reality when we are threatened with extinction. We can stop time. We can move stars. We can do things that should be impossible. But every time we use this power, it costs us something. It takes pieces of our souls." He stood and helped Gorath to his feet. "Go home," Hyun said. "Take whoever survived and return to your people. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that human space is closed forever. Tell them to never return." He paused at the door, looking back at the broken admiral. "And tell them one more thing. Tell them that we forgive them. We do not hate the Velon. We never did. We only wanted to be left in peace." Gorath watched the human leave. Then he looked around at his ruined fleet, at the century of time that had been stolen from him, at the awesome power of a species that could have destroyed him, but chose mercy instead. He understood now. The galaxy had not feared the wrong species. The galaxy had not been paranoid or foolish. The warnings had been real. The sleeping species had woken, and everything was different now. He gave the order to retreat. The surviving Velen ships, ancient and damaged, limped away from human space. They would carry the memory of this day across the stars, a warning to every civilization that might think of attacking humanity. The Omega event was over, but its shadow would last for 50,000 years. 50,000 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Velen Confederacy, once the most powerful force in known space, disbanded only 1,000 years after the Omega event. Their people scattered across the stars, carrying with them the memory of what they had witnessed. No species attacked human space again. Not once in 50,000 years. The story of the Omega event spread from world to world, growing larger with each telling. Some said the humans were gods who had taken mortal form. Others said they were the children of the universe itself, protected by forces beyond understanding. The truth was simpler and stranger. Humans were just humans. They had simply evolved differently than everyone else. On a warm morning in the year 147,042 Galactic Standard, a young woman named Nari stepped off a shuttle onto the surface of the Velen homeworld. She was a human ambassador, sent to attend a ceremony marking 50,000 years of peace between the two species. She expected tension. She expected old hatreds and suspicious looks. What she found was something else entirely. The Velen who greeted her at the landing pad fell to their knees. Their hands touched the ground, and their bodies trembled with emotion. They were not afraid. They were reverent. "Welcome, child of Earth," their leader said. "Welcome to our world. We are honored beyond words that you have come." Nari did not know what to say. She had studied Velen history. She knew what her ancestors had done to their fleet. She had expected anger or fear, not worship. "Please stand," she said gently. "You do not need to kneel before me. I am just a person, same as you." The Velen leader rose, but his eyes remained full of wonder. "You do not understand," he said. 50,000 years ago, your people could have destroyed us. They could have burned our worlds and erased our civilization from history. Instead, they showed us mercy. They let us live. They forgave us. He led her through the streets of the capital city. Every building they passed had images of humans carved into the walls. Every temple they saw had altars dedicated to Earth. Children stopped playing to stare at her with wide eyes, as if she were a being from legend. After the Omega event, our ancestors returned home in shame, the leader explained. They told everyone what had happened. At first, no one believed them. How could a young species have such power? How could they stop time and move stars? He paused before a massive building, its doors carved with scenes of the ancient battle. But then they showed us the recordings. They showed us the logs from Admiral Gorath's ship. They showed us his final testimony, recorded before he died of old age, only a few years after returning home. Inside the building was a museum dedicated to the Omega event. Nari walked through halls filled with artifacts from that ancient war. Pieces of rusted Velen ships, images of human faces, recording devices that still played the voice that had spoken to the fleet 50,000 years ago. In the center of the museum was a private chamber. The Velen leader brought Nari inside and closed the door. "This is the most sacred place on our world," he said. "Only the highest leaders are allowed to enter. I am Elder Gorath VII, descendant of the admiral who led the invasion." Nari felt a chill run through her. She was standing before the great-great-grandson of the man who had tried to destroy her people, countless generations removed. "I want to show you something," Elder Gorath said. "Something my family has guarded for 50,000 years." He activated an ancient recording device. The air filled with a ghostly image of Admiral Gorath, the original one, looking old and broken in the final days of his life. "I am recording this for my children, and their children, and all who come after," the image said. "I want them to know the truth about what happened. Not the legends, not the stories, the truth." The old admiral took a shaky breath. "When time stopped for our fleet, I thought I experienced nothing. But I was wrong. In that frozen instant the humans showed me something. They showed me every possible future where we won. Millions of timelines branching out into infinity. In some we conquered Earth. In some we killed every human in the galaxy." His voice cracked with emotion. "In every single one of those futures, humanity came back. No matter what we did, no matter how completely we destroyed them, they always returned. Sometimes it took 1,000 years. Sometimes it took 1,000,000. But they always came back, and they always forgave us." Nari felt tears forming in her eyes. "We were never fighting a species," the old admiral continued. "We were fighting something that cannot be defeated, something that cannot be erased. The humans are woven into the fabric of reality itself. They are inevitable, and they showed me this not to frighten me, but to help me understand." The recording flickered. "They could have destroyed us. They had every right. We came to their homes with weapons and hatred. We threatened their children and their future. But they chose mercy. They chose forgiveness. They let us live because they hoped we would become better." The admiral looked directly at the camera, his ancient eyes filled with something that might have been love. "I have spent the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that mercy. I hope my descendants will do the same." The recording ended. Nari stood in silence, tears running down her face. Elder Gorath watched her with gentle eyes. "For 50,000 years, my family has carried this message," he said. "We have taught every generation to remember the mercy of humans. We have built temples to honor your people. We have prayed that someday we might be worthy of the forgiveness you showed us." He knelt before her, just as his ancestors had knelt before her ancestors. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for letting us live. Thank you for believing we could be better." Nari helped him stand. She held his hands in hers and looked into his eyes. "We did not forgive you because you deserved it," she said softly. "We forgave you because we could not bear to become the monsters you thought we were. Every life we took in that war haunts us still. Every soldier who died because of our power is remembered on Earth." She thought of the Memorial of Mercy, the vast wall on Earth where the names of every Velen casualty were carved. Humans did not celebrate their victory. They mourned the lives they had been forced to take. "We are not gods," Nari said. "We are not perfect. We have the power to destroy, but we choose not to use it. That choice costs us something every day. It is the hardest thing we do." Later that night, Nari returned to her ship and began the long journey home. She thought about everything she had seen, the temples, the worship, the 50,000 years of reverence and fear. Back on Earth, a paradise world orbiting a star that humans had built with their own hands, she visited the Memorial of Mercy. Millions of names covered the walls. Velen names, the names of enemies who had come to kill her ancestors and had died instead. She touched the cold stone and whispered a prayer for them. Far across the galaxy, on a small world she would never see, a young alien child asked her mother a question. "Why do we not travel to human space? Is it forbidden?" The mother knelt down and touched her child's face. "It is not forbidden," she said. "We simply choose not to go." "But why?" The mother was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something so large, to someone so small. 50,000 years ago, the humans showed the galaxy what love looks like when it is threatened. They showed us that the gentlest species can become the most terrifying. They let our ancestors live because they hoped we would become better. We do not go to their space because we are still trying to be worthy of their mercy. Will we ever be worthy? The mother smiled sadly. I do not know, but we must keep trying. That is what the humans would want. Somewhere, on a beautiful blue world, children played in fields of grass, while their parents watched the stars. The power that had once terrified the galaxy slept quietly in their blood, waiting, hoping that it would never need to wake again. The universe had learned its lesson. Some species should not be threatened, some mercy should not be forgotten, and some memories should last forever. 50,000 years of peace, 50,000 years of remembrance, 50,000 years of a galaxy trying to be worthy of a forgiveness it had never earned. The humans asked for nothing in return. They never had. All they wanted was to live in peace, to love their children, to watch the stars in wonder. And the galaxy, finally, had learned to let them.